Like the pancakes.
Yes, they were very good, but we did open the bids for the skate park project. We received one bid, and that was for $275,000, which is much, much higher than we were anticipating. So we're hoping that this evening the council will reject that bid and give us a possibility to negotiate with Evergreen Skate Parks to get that amount down to a workable number for us.
Can you give us a little idea of how much was put away in the budget for it and what the dollars are that's being raised and how much you're expecting to be taken off through the negotiations? What are you hoping for?
Well, we're hoping to get it down to that $225,000 mark. Initially, the budget in FY16 was $185,000. We spent some of that on design services, so we're about $172 in that range of that money remaining. And then we received the $10,000 grant from the Tony Hawk Foundation, have also received $5,000 from the Watertown Community Foundation, and through the Watertown Community Foundation, $1,000 from the Youth Council, and then Brad on all the fundraising that the stakeholders have done. I'll let Brad kind of talk about where they're at right now and where they're projecting to be with fundraisers that they have planned.
All right. It's been a lot more work than I thought I would have got myself into, but we've done pretty well, and we could probably work a little harder at it, and everybody always
Brad,
can.
I'm going to break it. Can you tell us your name on there before you get going?
Bradley Carter. And we've got right about $10,000 just in grassroots fundraising in an account at the Watertown Community Foundation that they've set up for us. We just received a $500 check from Prairie Lakes Healthcare, which was exciting to read about this morning. And then we told you about the pancake feed. He took some of my muster with these other grants, but we did receive approval to hold a raffle starting with 2,000 tickets. And it's a guess, but we're estimating somewhere between $13,000 and $15,000 to be raised from that event. We have an event scheduled for May 20th, and it's going to be a skate-a-thon in conjunction with the Kempeska Crushers, which is the roller derby girls here in town. Kind of got a rough projection. What they are doing with that is they call it a skate-a-thon, but they're getting sponsored by the lap. They're going to do 100 laps, so if they get $1 lap, they'll raise $100 from their sponsorship. So, and we're going to do some food and some other things at that event. So we're thinking in that $2,000 to $5,000 range, a little stretch there, but we just don't really have our hands around that yet. So we're getting close. If everything worked out for the best. I know I've got some pledges from just some relatives and things that I haven't brought in yet, but we should be around $218,000 with what the city's got left in the budget and with the money that we will raise. It's going to be real close to that. So in negotiating with them, if we can even get it down, close to the 225, I really would like to see get it down 7,000 more, and then know that it's an approachable number that we should be able to do without too much more hard.
Jay, can I ask a question? Where did we advertise for bids for this? I mean, it's kind of a specialty thing, I guess. I don't know. Maybe Shane's the one to answer.
Yeah, we reached out to a wider region than initially. Jay had a list of potential skate park design and build people that we sent. We made sure that all those folks had the data. Then we went to the regional centers like Sioux Falls, Aberdeen, Fargo. I think we even put a publication in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, thinking that maybe we would attract the attention of a swimming pool construction company, because it's very similar work. You're just not putting water in it, and you're not doing all the plumbing stuff with it, but the style of work is very similar to building an outdoor swimming pool. So we kind of concentrated on that type of a net to try to grab attention. And of course, Evergreen Skate Park is affiliated in some fashion with the team that designed our park. So they kind of had an inroads. And what we've done is, since we've taken those bids and identified why the bids came in as high as they did, some of the in-kind work that we're working on or negotiating with was currently that area that the skate park's going to be built in is built up with a asphalt blotter, we call it pavement, but it's multiple layers of seal coat mixture, so it does kind of become an asphalt pavement. And one of the bigger question marks was getting rid of that material. So we've decided that if that's a big issue, that's something that city staff and forces can go in and remove that at a much reduced cost than having the contractor come in and take care of that item. One other thing is they estimated about 1,000 yards of fill material that needed to be brought into the project. So we've identified where we have that material, and the city could supply that material for the project. So that's another item that we're negotiating off the price. And the last two things revolve around finish work, putting topsoil in and seeding and that kind of stuff. And we have the expertise to do that kind of work on our own through the Parks Department. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're reining in. What can the city staff do, and how can we get that price down to a workable thing? Now, of course, so we can't roll up our sleeves in actuality until the bid is rejected tonight, or at least that's what our recommendation is going to be. So then we'll roll up our sleeves and go to work with Evergreen Skate Parks to negotiate that price down and try to get it down below the 225 range is our goal. I don't know how amenable they'll be below that, but that's at least our initial starting point to try to get to. And then, we do have to realize that there are costs to the city by doing that in-kind work. In other words, we have to delay some other things that we would have to do to get this work done. So not that we can't get everything we want done this summer, it just some things might move a little slower or a little different schedule than we had originally planned. So with that, I guess, if you have any questions, I can.
Shane, have we identified any other communities within the region anyway that have made similar types of parks and reached out to them to find out who did the work for them to see if we can? Seems odd that we'd get one bid only on it, but have we looked at other communities at all and to see what may have happened there and who did it?
Evergreen Skate Park has done one other park in the state. I believe it was out in the western half of the state. Don't remember what community it was. Fort Thompson? Yes. Okay, so Fort Thompson did a skate park. They did that recently meaning probably in the last few years. Last year. So
and where are they from?
This company is based out of Portland, but they have a branch in Montana. That's where the official bid location came from, was Montana. So they're about one state away, and ironically, they do have a job in Michigan that if we could time our project out, they could do it on the way to the Michigan job. Otherwise, I'm assuming that they would catch us on the way back.
When would that be, Shane, roughly?
Again, I can't get all the specifics until we reject tonight's bid, then I can get into the more.
Now, is this lighted? Is the park intended to be lighted? No?
We aren't approaching that now, but I'm certainly thinking that we would probably want to have some lights out there similar to a ball field or whatever that can be turned on and off manually, and then we'd probably have somebody drive by it at a certain time of the night, and if the light's been left on by somebody, have it shut off, or have a timer that shuts it off at a certain time. Any of those options are viable.
Jay, I asked a question last week after the Park and Rec Board meeting. Are any of these grants, are we in jeopardy of losing it because we're not moving forward any more quickly on this?
Not at this time, but if it would extend on for another year, I think we would be. And I spoke with the owners for Green Skate Park on Friday, and they certainly are willing to negotiate with us to get that price down. And like Shane said, I think it would be relatively soon if we can work out a deal that they could come in, because they do have a project that they're working on right now, as Shane said, in Montana and going to Michigan, so they would catch us on the way through, and it might work out pretty well.
But as far as a Tony Hawk grant, for example, there's no deadline as far as when
No.
they have to be. Okay.
No.
We're continuing giving them information as we raise funds and stuff.
Yeah, what Brad said is that they wanted us to flood them with information. So the guys took some pictures at the pancake feed yesterday, and we're going to send that on to them. And they've been working with us on a weekly basis. There's information that I'm sending back and forth to them. And would just like to introduce, he hasn't spoken yet, but Patrick Buller is one of our skateboarders in town here. And Patrick has been absolutely instrumental in getting out there and hitting the turf and trying to raise funds for this project, and he's done a super job.
Is there anything you want to say there, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm really excited that Watertown is actually going to be attaining this facility if we do everything goes correctly. There's not a lot of equipment like this for our youth, especially for people that don't generally participate in the average sports that are offered in school. I myself have never been one to kind of fit the mold for a lot of the average kids, and there's a lot of other kids like me throughout the school that I've gone with that haven't really just found a way an interest in sports offered by schools. So something like this is definitely great for the community. It should give the kids an outlet to focus that energy on. It definitely gave me an outlet, and I was able to stay out of trouble throughout my youth. I just went to the skate park every day, and that's what I did. And contrary to what some people may believe, skateboarders, I never saw really anything that, like, they're not a bunch of troublemakers. They're not doing drugs at the skate park or anything like that. It's just it's just kind of like an artistic. It's like art and an athletic sport kind of combined, but it's not even a sport in itself. It's kind of close to an art, and that's something that we don't really offer in the school. Is the arts within Watertown, or just the programs aren't. We don't have a lot of art programs or things like that for kids like that. So kids would be able to focus the energy on something that's athletic, involves arts, and things like that. So I think that would be great for the community.
Everybody up here is dying to ask it, Patrick. Okay, here's the question. How many broken bones have you had already?
Oh, ha.
Huh?
I
Come
have
on.
never broken a bone
Haven't you
in my
really?
entire 10 years of skateboarding. I've yet to
Really?
go to
Good
the
for you.
hospital for any related injury. I've dislocated each of my knees, but not skating. Yeah, they're prone to dislocation. Never skating though.
Perfect.
Never, just scrapes like this.
I know.
this, that.
I know Dan Albertson is dying to get this thing done so he can get out there and do some skating.
I guess I just like to publicly say, Bradley, I know you've been involved in this from day one. It sounds like some other people behind the scenes. I really want to extend my appreciation for what you've been doing behind the scenes to try to raise funds for this project.
Thank you very much.
Question for Jay: if you do get the bid down to where it's feasible, will you make it this construction season?
Yes. Absolutely. Like I say, he was talking possibly even within the next month, if we can get this worked out quickly enough, that they'd be coming through the state. So it could happen relatively quickly.
How would that work, Justin, if they come and they do that negotiations? That will have to come back in front of the council, will it not, to make it approval?
Well, and, not only that, but I think we might have to look at the bid laws here again just to get a better idea of where we set negotiation after a bid is relegated to a few select circumstances, and we need to make sure that this is one of them. So, but yes, it would have to go back before the council.
What's the construction time limit? I mean, as far as how long to build?
What they've told us in the past is 6 to 8 weeks. And Brad has been working out lining up housing for them, because they all come down as a crew and stay right here and work on the project.
Okay, well, thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it. And Patrick, if you find some wood on the way out, knock on it, just in case, all right? Thanks, buddy. See ya. Okay, number 3 on here. Discussion on the sale of alcoholic beverages in retail establishments. The reason I put this on is, if you guys remember, a couple weeks ago I kind of gave you that heads up that something was in the works that facilities in town are looking at selling alcoholic beverages. And I asked you to kind of kick that around and think about what's going on. And lo and behold, they did come forward, and Target, of course, is asking us to approve alcohol sales in their store. It did go through the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission said the area is okay and the site is fine. So they don't have an issue with it. And I wanted to have Justin again visit with us about the lack of city ordinances that are there for the alcohol. But I just wanted to let you also know some of the conversations I've had with others. I've talked to, actually they called me, Walmart did. They're all in favor of this alcohol sales in their store. And they said that there's a chance of over 7 figures that would come in play for them if it came to be. So Justin, I want you to kind of light it up and give us a little idea of what's going on here.
Mayor, may I just
Yes.
interject quickly? I have a potential conflict, so I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion.
Okay, thanks, Don.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you brought up 2 items, Mayor, the first of which regards the lack of an ordinance in the revised ordinances that would restrict to whom licenses could be issued. And the council may recall the conversation we had a few meetings or work sessions ago, as well as the action that was taken in fall of 2016 regarding the elimination of Section 2.0113, which was the one restriction that existed, or one prohibition, if you will, on issuing of licenses to certain types of establishments. That was eliminated for a number of reasons, one of which was that it related to only one of multiple malt beverage licenses. The other reason that I think it's important to stress here is that within statute we have the mechanism by which the council is to approve or disapprove licenses, applications for new retail licenses, transfer of existing licenses, and that's in South Dakota Codified Law 35-2-1.2. And why that's important and why it gets to why putting it in ordinance is problematic is because the South Dakota Supreme Court construed what that statutory authority entails in a case called Hendricks v. Anderson. That's 522 Northwest 2nd, Reporter 499, pin site 501. It was a South Dakota Supreme Court case from 1994. The quote that I think is important to take from that is that in South Dakota, no statute or municipal ordinance establishes the legal right to the issuance of a liquor license. The grant of authority from the state to local governing boards for issuing alcoholic beverage licenses is set forth in SDCL 35-2-1.2. Thus, the issuance of a liquor license by a local governing body is a discretionary act, end quote. Now, that last phrase, discretionary act, gets to the heart of this, which is to say that we can't, based upon this opinion, it appears we cannot put in ordinance any sort of prohibition that license applications need to come before this council and be adjudged on their merits, utilizing the council's quasi-judicial authority. So I know there may have been a question about whether we could reimpose an ordinance similar to that one that was struck, and I believe this court case appears to prevent that from happening. Now, beyond that, then the question is, okay, what we have in statute, then what does that mean? Under South Dakota Codified Law 35-2-1.2, the council is authorized to approve or disapprove a license application based upon 2 qualities: whether the applicant is a suitable person or entity, whether the proposed location is suitable. Now, the governing body, and this is according to the South Dakota Supreme Court's decision in Cooper v. Hochschild, it's a South Dakota Supreme Court case in 1995, the court stated that the governing body has broad discretion in acting on the application. but that discretion is limited to those two considerations. So there are then grounds within those considerations that the council can consider. That includes the extent to which minors frequent or are employed in such place of business. It includes the adequacy of police facilities to properly police the proposed location, the manner in which the business is operated, and other factors inherently associated in the sale of alcoholic beverages. So what I was hoping to do here is just sort of lay out kind of the framework. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. It's a good refresher. I know a lot of this is, the authority that you're well aware of, but I just thought I'd bring it out here at this time too.
So now all these mom and pop convenience stores that have teenagers working for them, they would have to have a 21-year-old on staff. Is that correct? My understanding is I guess I would have to check with state law to see exactly where the requirement is that persons of a certain age are only permitted to handle alcohol. I know it's there. I just don't know the.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure that you got to have a 20-year-old, 21-year-old to sell
So
that.
I see that kind of hard. That's what a lot of teenagers do.
Currently, are we talking about just like 3.2, or are we talking hard
No,
liquor?
this-
Or where
no,
are we?
Not hard liquor. What they're looking for is beer and wine. And it
Wine
would
also.
Not be, it would not be 3.2. It would be just normal beer and wine. Yeah.
But both.
It could
More
be,
likely both beer and wine.
but it could be beer or it could be beer and wine.
That's
correct.
correct.
Right.
That's correct. They're different licenses.
Chief, do you want to say anything while you're back there? I know that you have some opinion on this.
Yeah, just a few things, and if you had any questions, I'd certainly entertain them. But I think I've let most of you know that I'm not in favor of it for a number of reasons. Theft is too easy. Kids are in the store at all hours of the night. They can go into a liquor store now and be kicked out immediately. Go into a retail store, a convenience store. We're opening the box here if we approve this. So that's just my concerns, that we're opening the box. Enforcement gives us more places to have to worry about. We'd have to run more stings, those type of things. I think there's enough places in town to buy it now. I think we already exceed the liquor licenses in town. And I know there's a number. I don't know the exact number. Maybe somebody else does. But how many malt beverage licenses we have now? Just my thoughts.
But there isn't anything that restricts the number of malt beverage license, right?
Correct.
What does what the other communities? How many other communities in South Dakota have them? Target or Walmart, or to me, if you open it up to those, I don't know how you draw the line. I think it ends up being whoever applies, unless there's, there are some restrictions on how close they can be to school or church or whatever those things are. But that's going to be our limits, in my opinion. But
I agree.
Back to my question is, do any other cities? I guess I don't go to any of them to buy anything like that. So
I don't know the number if all cities allow it or not, Bill. I know some do. Some convenience corners will stop in to have beer, malt beverage type stuff, but I don't know if all the other cities do it. I think that's one thing that makes Watertown kind of unique. Our parents can go shopping with their kids and not have to see that type of stuff down the aisles. And I know some places they'll say they'll start with just a little display, and pretty soon that can grow, because nothing in the license says that it can't be, down 2 rows or 3 rows. So just some thoughts and concerns.
Yeah, but my issue kind of gets to be, it opens up to everything. But if there's been in other cities, do we have any kind of any way to measure any effect that might have had?
I guess
because you can sit there and you
some
can
of the
guess
other
at what
cities.
might happen or whatever. But I mean, is there
Right.
any real statistics that somebody else can say, well, we opened up a can of worms here
Yeah.
or such?
I know it's the Watertown Health Youth that sent out some information. I think most of you might have seen that, and there's some links there you can go and check. And there's a lot of studies out there that talk about the density of it in a city can lead to more crimes and more issues. And that's a nationwide study. It doesn't say anything particular to South Dakota or any one town in South Dakota.
I think the configurations that I've seen of alcohol retail mixes have been anything from located right in the store the Targets and the Walmarts and some of those that I've seen the liquor in have been primarily the Greatland Targets or the Super Walmarts that have an extensive grocery department. In Fargo, you have to leave the building and go into another building even though they're attached. That's one configuration. Sure. Another is that the liquor area is separated by, a glass door. So to answer Bill's question, it does go on in other cities, and each one has a unique city by city ordinance. In for example, in Wisconsin, you can be in Brown County and they have to be separate, but you can go to Outagamie County and they don't. So I think it's just one of those things where each community has decided how they wanted to handle it. Yeah.
I do believe that there's folks here from the Target store. Is that correct?
I think so.
Are you from Target? Walmart? Did you guys want to say something? You want to step up? You're sure welcome to do that. And just tell us your name, address, phone number. No, just your name. And just
Jackson.
Just fill
Kaylee
us in on that.
Jackson. Store
We
manager.
spoke the other day.
Yes, I'm the one that called you. Our take on it is we would just a guess, but we would probably generate about $1 million extra, which part of that would contribute to sales tax in Watertown, which I know we've trended down in the Watertown community. So that would be our number one take on it. I can speak pretty intelligently to the Brookings store. I worked in the Brookings store for quite a few years. They sell wine and beer in the store. We do, when we talked about a cashier, we do, if we have a minor at the register or anybody under the age of 21, they have to call a supervisor over in order to do the sale at the cash register. That is the policy that we follow for that cashier. There's also a sign that we stick up that says this cashier is unavailable to sell beer or wine at this register.
Wondering though about the just playing devil's advocate about the sales tax revenue. I'm going to either buy my beer at Walmart or at discount. Is it a net sum game? I mean, are we not gaining sales tax revenue? Are we just spreading it around, shuffling it around? I guess that's what I'm wondering is, that's a fairly significant number, but is it, diluting? I don't know that there would be a lot more sales tax revenue, just shifting it, I guess.
And we also question that in looking at some prior stores and talking to some other managers around, our average transaction is about $55 for an average transaction. If we would be able to carry beer and wine, it raises our average transaction to about $75 because when folks come in, we become to be a destination on holidays so when they come in, they also buy their cups, their chips, more party supplies at our destination, in which they probably wouldn't buy at a other convenience store.
Are there any Walmarts that you're aware of that have the separate room per se for their beer and wine sales versus aisle 3 and 4?
Yes, Darrell Sawyer here. I actually managed one of the Wyoming stores, and we were the pilot. We were the first store that ever had liquor in the state of Wyoming. And after 6 years, the concern about the stings, we had several. We passed every one just by the way we did it. As far as separate sections, I think one of the Sioux Falls stores has actually a separate section. We've looked at that too, possibly with the Subway empty up front in our store right now as a totally separate area for liquor. Did have that out in Wyoming. I will tell you, it was, I think Kaylee's estimate is really, really kind of conservative. We were doing out of a little. We had a separate room. We were doing $2.5 million in liquor sales. That didn't include all the other auxiliary sales from. We put different things out there. Like for instance, you look at pop and chips and different stuff like that. Even things like, of course, we had a full liquor, and even things like corkscrews in that area from the housewares department. And all of it, you couldn't really measure the sales on that because it's in two different areas of the store. So a little bit harder to measure the sales on that from there. But it really turned out quite well. The rest of the stores in Wyoming got liquor license after about when I left Wyoming, come back to Watertown, which is my home. There was a lot of the stores getting licenses at that time. As far as South Dakota in liquor, I think we're the only Walmart in the state of South Dakota, and we get a lot of heat on that. We get people coming in, especially our travelers, stopping in. I don't think there's a day that we probably don't get, especially in the evenings. We don't get 5, 6, 7 people wondering where our beer or where our wine or where our liquor is. And the first thing we always hear is, well, every other Walmart has it. And so that's something that I think would, as far as the worrying about selling to minors, and I don't really see that as a problem. We pretty much are pretty compliant. We're pretty compliant. We make sure that our people are know what the rules are. And normally we would have somebody only that's old enough to sell that liquor in most cases, depending on how we set it up. So.
Any of you have questions for these two?
I do have one comment. Basically, this might go back to Justin. It wasn't but 6, 8, maybe 10 months ago we turned down a Casey's store, basically asking to do something very similar. Where would we stand on that once we turned down one person for basically the same thing? I guess we didn't turn down the Casey's store. We put restrictions on the Casey's store to put it into a separate location with a wall.
That is correct, Councilman. In terms of where that would set us from a legal perspective, I think there's one case out there in the jurisprudence, and I don't have it in front of me, but one of the ways to challenge a city council's decision, given it's a discretionary act to approve a license, is to say basically by a writ of mandamus that the city council should have acted differently. And one of the ways of asserting that argument is to say that the city council acted in an arbitrary and capricious manner. And in fact, somebody did make that colorable claim against the city council when there were 2 licensees up for consideration, potential licensees, and both had a similar arrangement, yet one was turned down. Now, obviously, there's been 8 months that has gone, but I can't forecast. I mean, number one, if anybody made a claim against the city, how that would turn out. There are clear distinctions between this case and that case, but it is something to consider, I would say.
But we're set up to fail in that scenario. You know how I feel about this whole thing. I won't use the words that I used with you on the phone this morning, but because it seems really silly that we aren't able to control this via ordinance. And we went through this morning, and I'll give that to you. But because one of the things that I try to look for is our consistency and our fairness, but yet the discretionary act, going to Randy's point, we're set up to fail on that based on the change of council people that are here, or a change of a mayor, or a change of city staff, or whatever it is. And so the different body of people or the situations can dictate your decision.
That's precisely it.
So as long as we can't have an ordinance that dictates this, can we have a guiding policy that says, here are the conditions under which we at least as a guide. Mm-hmm. And for example, I know when Hy-Vee came, what's that been, probably 4 or 5, 6 years ago now probably, they came to us and they wanted it in store, and we said, well, it's okay, but you're going to have a separate entrance to it. Mm-hmm. Well, they eventually went to where they're at. Sure. Well, I don't see the big difference between a separate entrance versus what we were talking about, what Beth had mentioned of having an entrance within the store, but a separate area.
Sure.
So can we establish guidelines to use in our making a decision so that we can be consistent? Because we certainly want to be consistent with each person that is requesting that. So that's my question to you.
And Councilman, I would say that the rationale needs to follow the criteria set out in statute. Suitable person, suitable location. That's where the inquiry is focused. Now, if the council relies upon, similar themes that are grounded in those concerns, that's the prerogative of the council. Obviously, it's your position to, when there's a public hearing, to take testimony, to have that factor into your decision. And really that gets to the crux of why this is a discretionary act. There's a public hearing. There's a chance to sway, to convince. And so, it's fine to have that perspective, to have, a criteria that you have, to make this kind of decision, that's your prerogative. It really is.
So as a council, can we say what a suitable location is? Can we put a description out there for suitable location?
Sure. I would be hesitant to say this is an example of a suitable location and this is not in all circumstances. Because chances are you aren't going to be able to come up with all of the possible criteria permutations. I mean, again, going back to what that Hendricks v. Anderson case said is, it's discretionary, this whole application process. So it needs to be really boiled down to case by case.
Jumping in there on that same question, I mean, what the Planning Commission or Board of Adjustment, whichever group it was, here a few weeks ago, I mean, didn't they already kind of answer the suitable location question by saying that?
What they answered was looking at zoning purely. So the question of location is not only a zoning concern, but it is also a licensing concern, as in location within the store or location on the premises. I mean, it could be even a different place on the actual ground that was given the conditional use of bar or tavern. So, yeah.
It's. I think if I'm not mistaken, it's the same thing as if anybody applies for a liquor license of that nature. It's suitable location and of course the tenant, whoever owns that property, and if there are any issues, because we've looked at those before, where you've had problems with some people and you might want to rethink whether or not you want to, if you want to issue a license. But I just have a question. You and I talked about this. We've had discussions about this. But just to be clear, if we said yes, because this is a case by case, if we did this with Target, would that not set a precedent? Would it be difficult for us to turn anybody down? Like, for example, if Walmart said, hey, now we want one.
I think it's fair to say that it would be made more difficult. Okay. But at the same time, as I stressed earlier, case-by-case basis, there are plenty of differentiations that you can find on a given case. Not one will ever be the same.
Now, if I had a liquor store today, got my liquor license all approved, and I decide to build a grocery store around it, is that legal? And the reason why I say that is we're going in reverse right now, right? We're building a grocery store or another type retail store, and we're looking to add liquor, of booze or whatever, right?
That's right.
But if I had a liquor store and decided to build the grocery store, can I do that?
I can tell you it would be, certainly if there was...
I should have been in debate in high school.
Yeah, you really should have, Councilman. You would have been stellar. I can tell you with on sale, for instance, if you had a bar and you wanted to become a restaurant, that's going to be more difficult. In terms of the off sale equivalent, having a liquor store and then expanding into a grocery store,
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
Yeah,
in a way, I'm trying to show the point of how silly this can be at some point. I thought it would be fairly obvious when you put the feelers out as to how people feel on this thing.
No, it's not.
And it's like 50-50.
Yeah.
Don't, and that 50-50 makes up of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Then there's the morality issue, and then there's the good old boy issue. You're just protecting the liquor stores. And amongst those three, that kind of makes up the category of the 50% that aren't for it. And then the other 50% said, why should you be restricting it? And it's a convenience issue. I wish there was a way. I would love to see this be able to go into ordinance, because I'd love to see somebody eventually refer it to a vote so the people of Wardtown can decide. Because look at all the people that are here tonight that are concerned with this. We've got two people from Walmart, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very hard for us as the decision makers here to get a read on this when we have two people here.
Well, if I might be so bold, just from a legal perspective, I would put out the plug for our alcohol licensing regime, statutorily speaking, needing some revision, needing some clarity. Whether it's off sale or on sale, licensing in this state in terms of alcohol, it's Byzantine at best. So there are a number of different issues that I think need to be addressed at the state level, and this might very well be one of them.
My question would be, we have representatives from Walmart here that are waiting for Target to get this done to jump into it, but where are the representatives from Target tonight?
Yeah, I have no idea, Randy. We just published the the agenda, and whoever shows, and so I we don't go out and actually tell them that it's on there. Yeah.
Just a comment and a question of you, Mayor. First of all, I want to reiterate what Mike just said. I spent probably an hour and a half going through Facebook comments after you posed a question here last week, Mike. And you're right. I mean, it was split right down the middle, and probably the most logical one was somebody said, okay, list out plus and minuses in a sheet of paper, and he did it, and he, was virtually a toss-up when he was all said and done. So that's my comment. My question of you, Mayor, is I have no way of refuting the numbers as far as what the additional revenue that would be brought in based upon adding this to your sales. But a question of you, Mayor, you're closest to, we're pushing retail development here in Watertown. You're closest to, contacts that have been made about possibly coming to Watertown. Has this ever been an issue in your discussions with a potential establishment coming to Watertown?
No, not on sales of beer and wine. There hasn't been any. I also wanted to just let you know I've talked to numerous convenience stores, and they actually look at it as it would be a positive. This is what they're telling me, because they would be able to sell individual cans in the coolers at a higher margin. So they're looking at that, when people drive up, get a little gas, want a couple beers, hit the road. That's what they're thinking. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that that's what they're looking at. I'm just throwing it out there.
You're welcome, Lee.
The name for those when you're kids.
So anyhow, that's really what they're looking at. They would not need the salesperson in their liquor store. It would be all taken care of within the convenience store. But that's kind of what they're saying to me. So most of the convenience stores that have liquor to the side of them would be in favor of this. I'm just letting you know that. I do think that some of the other ones that just are liquor stores without the convenience side would probably be opposed to this. So you're going to get it from all sides. I think it's a non-win-win either way we go. So I think we'll probably pass for now. Justin, thank you for your time. Walmart, thank you, folks. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else in the audience who wants to speak real quickly on it? I would give you just a quick minute, but otherwise I'm going to move on to the next discussion. Thanks, Justin. Okay, so I am going to move on, and we're going to talk about discussion on the county request to build a storage building next to the field house. And I see, Jim, you're here. If you want to come up also to the microphone and with Shane, we'll kind of take a look and see what your plans are.
Just to start out, I'm Jim Sutton with Cottington County Emergency Management, and just to give you a little bit of history and how we got to where we're at this evening. For considerable amount of time I've been working with the county commissioners for better storage for the sandbags and the equipment that I have. Right now, my sandbags, I have them stored in the old wooden building that sits north of the county highway shop. And in that building, I've got an excess of 100,000 sandbags in there that we need when we have flooding. Well, that building's in such poor shape that I've got the sandbags covered with big sheets of plastic to keep all the water off of them that's coming through the roof. So I'd been talking with the county commissioners about this problem for some time. Then the SDSU extension that has their offices out at the county extension building approached the facilities manager, and they're in need of storage space for their equipment that they want the county to provide. And also the Cottington County Sheriff's Department, they've been storing vehicles in a non-secure area. They're in need of a place where they can have secure storage. So we talked with the county commissioners about building a building, and then we were looking for a location. The location, the property that the county owns south of the ice arena was discussed. And then we also have had a discussion about possibly having a building built on city property south of the National Guard, old National Guard Armory building. And that's the reason we're here this evening to talk to you is that, you know, what's the best location? We've got the property south of the ice arena, but then, you know, the city has property there close by to the extension complex. And we're looking at, you know, possibly asking for something to be worked out where we could build the building that we're looking at, which would be 40 feet wide and 104 feet long. And we've done some measuring, and we're looking at a location that's on the far east end of that area south of the old National Guard Armory, set back there towards the east end where it would be out of the way as much as possible for the Park and Rec operation that they have there. So we're looking at that, and maybe Shane can point that area out to you.
We have that identified on this drawing of the aerial points of reference. Kemp Avenue here. This is the old Fieldhouse Armory. Cook Complex softball fields here to the south. So that building would be tucked into the far southeast corner of the property, as Jim had explained.
I didn't expect you to stop that quick. I'm just, okay, yeah, it's like, boom, where'd he go? One of the things is that when you look at the type of building, and Brenda, you may want to come up and talk also, because we did have conversation with Brenda and Milo and myself about this location. And when you look at the type of building that they're looking at, the steel building, you know, it really would not fit over there by the ice facility. I think we've had that discussion, and we know that. We know that it wouldn't fit to the north in that parking lot. It really would not. One of the things that we discussed is our trolley. You know, our trolley is a very nice piece of equipment that actually sits over to the left over there in that facility, that kind of right there. That's where it sits right now, and that's more of a gas storage type facility. If there's leaks for the armory, you know, they could put their equipment in there. So where they're looking at is right there. It's all fenced in. It would be very safe and secure. If the sheriff has anything that's impounded or any kind of evidence or something that could go into that. What it would be nice, though, is if there's an opportunity for us to increase the size of that building by 20 or 22 foot. You know, if the city could partner with you on that to put our trolley into, we could get rid of that one building, which really would open up that whole parking lot better for us to serve the people that are needing out there. So that's kind of where we're at. We discussed the idea of selling land. We discussed the idea of leasing land. There's a lot of leasing going on between the county and the city right now on different things. And Jim, I got to say that, you know, having those sandbags in that particular building and the condition that they're under is not good. And I think
Right.
this would be very, very good for you. So I like the idea, and I think the county really at this particular time when they're looking at building the jail really don't have the funds to actually purchase that land, if I'm not mistaken, Brendan. If you want to touch on that.
Yes, that's correct. With us being in that process, our hope is, and we're requesting the city to enter into a lease agreement for that property at this time.
I got a question. Why, with the size of that property, why would we want to butt a steel building up to residential property?
What we're looking at is we wouldn't butt it right up. There would be about 20 feet from the fence that's currently there. We'd be sitting about 20 feet west of the fence that is there on the property boundary.
Yeah, one of the things, John, just so you know, they're not set in stone that it has to be there. They would definitely go to the west if we wanted them to. If we got rid of that particular building there where the trolley sits in now, they would be very happy to go to the west and extend it off that way.
Couldn't they, instead of being north and south, couldn't it run east and west back up against what would be the property line to the softball fields?
You know, we talked about that, and I'm not sure why, but it just seemed like Milo was not happy with the north-south entrance on it. I don't know why.
Well, and we'd be looking at trying to put it in an area that doesn't interfere with the park and rec operation too. And visiting with Jay DeLang, we felt that this was a good location for the building, and Jay could probably speak to that.
Well, here's my opinion. I believe what I had heard originally as far as its original planned area by the ice rink. I don't care who owns that land. There's a much better use for that land eventually than probably a storage shed. I would love to see, I think this is a great idea for us to work out something here. I really would like to see us work out some kind of a land swap, something to get, that doesn't cost you dollars, but we start clearing up some of these multi-ownership type things, because eventually they come down to being problematic. We've seen it a number of times where you have long-term leases, short-term leases. Now what do you do with it? And I would like to see us, when we have an opportunity, to clean some of them up. And it may not be dollar for dollar per se, but let's clean them up as best we can so that we don't have that, I own the land, you own the building, you own the land, I own the building, and now we're down the road and something needs to be done, and
I just want to second that, because I've been involved in discussions where we see land building, different owners, and there's more of that than I thought was out there. So that's an appealing idea.
Mm-hmm. Brenda, couldn't there be trees or something? You know, John's concern is right, because if you're having housing there, but could there be a buffer of some nice trees put on the west side of that building if it could be? Jim says there's 20 feet, but
there's what we're looking at is 20 feet, but you also see the trees that are currently in that
part
area.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you filled in trees the rest of the way, that would be a nice buffer for the. I mean, I agree with the houses that's not a real great thing to look out your backyard, but trees are.
Jay, is there a reason,
nice fence,
from the park and rec standpoint, that the east-west wouldn't work?
Why don't you grab the microphone, Jay?
Well, we were just looking at the fact that we do, not only for the farm show where they park back there for the vendors for the farm show, but we get quite a few of the athletic teams that enter the south door of the field house turf area, and they park back there, the baseball and that type of thing, and they also do some parking back there for games. They store some of their stuff back there and meet there and park, and then head out on the buses to various baseball games. So just thought it would probably be a little more convenient over there, but certainly open to different options.
I guess what they're looking for tonight really is just kind of the idea that because they're out for bids right now on the building, are you not?
That's correct. In fact, we're scheduled to open bids for the building tomorrow at the King County Commission meeting.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, are we going to build on the property south of the ice arena, or are we going to work something else out?
Brenda, what do you think? Would the county be open to maybe trading the land under the ice facility for this?
I guess I can't speak for the rest of them. It has not been, the question has not been asked yet, so I really don't know how everyone else would feel about that. But I know when it was mentioned, part of it, they definitely were in favor of doing the lease at this point because of where we're at in our situation.
Right, but if it doesn't cost you dollars and all we're doing is cleaning up paperwork and we continue a level of cooperation that we have had, doesn't that seem to work?
I'm not saying it's not, I'm just
Right,
saying.
I know.
that's
I'm
where
just
I
saying,
was coming
it
from
for your
before.
project or scenario you're in, if it's not a dollar exchange, really doesn't affect that, right?
Right, I'll bring it back to
Yeah.
the rest of the commission and.
I like the spot, and I like, what type of building you guys looking to put up? Is it a metal building, or what is it?
It's a metal building. It would have 5 garage doors on the west side of the building, if it was in that location. And the design that we have would be a tan color with the bottom 2 feet with a darker color steel, so it's more eye appealing.
But to me, either place goes. I know where John's coming from. I don't know how those people that live there, how they feel, but to me, it's 6 of one, half dozen other as far as its functionality there for you and the Park and Rec. But I'm all in favor of it, but I would really like to see some kind of a scenario take place that we're not on this double ownership issue. I just,
Brenda,
I really
would you
would.
see it being a problem to add that 20 feet for the trolley on the end of that if the city were to pay for some of that?
I would have to do some more measuring too. I don't know that we would have enough room in that area if we added another 20 feet between the fences there. But, it's something that we could look at.
Jim, have we had discussions at all with the landowners about the proposed plan at this point?
No, we have not, sir.
We have not.
I just know we go through great strides
Yeah.
to keep residential away from commercial buildings like that.
Shane,
And here
correct
we're in a
me,
spot where we're just going to plop one in right next to it. I think it needs to be clear across that parking lot.
Correct
we're
me
gonna
if
do
I'm
it.
wrong. Would they not have to notify all the landowners? We would have to do that as a city and a county if it was to be built in that area. It would be open
We
to
can, it depends on how the complex is zoned. It might be
Yeah.
zoned to allow that style of building, and then we technically wouldn't have
Yeah.
to, but we certainly can always give that
that.
notification.
Right. And I think that the best thing is to visit with them and talk to them and see what's going on. I think that we're very open to doing something here. It's just a matter of how fast can we move to get it agreed upon with the council.
I think at the very least, too, some sort of tree-type screening would be, I think, effective there if we did move forward with that in that location.
Will you be discussing this tomorrow at the commission meeting?
Yes.
I want to say one final thing.
Yeah.
If we do a land swap, but we add more to the building, I think there we start to get into cloudy water again, because would we technically own a portion of the building on somebody else's land? So that needs to be a discussion point as well, if there is an actual concern about owning something on somebody else's land.
Mayor, my opinion on that is we have a place for the trolley right now. I wouldn't spend the money on just a different place for it. That's
the
my
only
opinion.
reason I say it is if they went off to the west side rather than on the east side. They could go up alongside their building there and have substantially more room than being over next to the houses. That's the only reason I would have.
I'll guarantee you one thing, looking at that metal building is going to still be way better than what those people in that residence looked at for years, which was military equipment, so.
That's correct.
So I guess as a consensus, just so we know, are you in favor of it being in that location or not? Just so I know what to go back and say to the commission.
In that location, whether it's east or west side of that lot?
Right.
Is that basically what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you have full support from the council here that we can get something worked out in that area.
I would be if it's on
I
the
think it's
west
a better
end.
spot than, definitely than on 19th or 20th, whatever out there.
West side, or even to the south side of that. Instead of facing east or west, you could do it either way. Yep, I like it.
Bids you got let, what kind of schedule do you have? Were they supposed to start fairly soon if you're going through bids tomorrow?
It just depends on what we receive for bids. You know, we don't have a strict timetable set up on this, and it would have to deal with the company that's going to do the construction and what their timetable looks like.
But my guess is fairly soon you're going to have to.
We're going to have to make a decision.
It's not going to be dragging around. It's going to have to get something done, and I think for the most part, everybody here is in agreement that area is not a problem with us as far as. I agree with Mike. If there's some way to do something where the land issue gets cleaned up, that would be nice. But beyond that, I think this is a lot better spot than next to.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing also then is you're not in support of a lease agreement.
I think at last resort, but I think they would like to try to see if there's some type of a swap.
I guess you'll have to let us know then of what portion you're thinking, so then, I know what to bring back.
Right.
Yep.
Just looking at the diagram, and this is just a for instance, if this building went away, this is a parcel all by itself, but it does extend up into the building. So we could, if we find a way, this parcel could be partially conveyed off to the county and then give them a perpetual easement through this driveway and entrance here for quick, easy access. Would be an idea. I'm just as a, for instance, on how to get past where we've talked about tonight, but that's how I'd at least start the conversation going forward.
So if I understand you correctly, we could give them that building and they'd have to take it down. No, I'm kidding. But thank you very much, you guys, for being here, Jim.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can get something worked out. So number 5, any future items that need to be, that you're hoping for to put on? Otherwise, I will adjourn this meeting. We'll be back at 7 o'clock for the city council meeting. Thank you.